So talk to me about, there's scenarios where, let's say I have a very large data set, right, across, multiple sources, et cetera, and I don't really know what I want to use, but I don't necessarily want to build my analytics data store, let's say, with everything. Is there an option where, maybe some is on standby, if you will, waiting in the wings, if that's even a thing? How do I work through that scenario, right?
Yeah, so this is I was about to say this is a problem a lot of people deal with. Weirdly enough, it's a problem a lot of people don't deal with because in my experience, I think people are so afraid of this problem, they just don't collect the data or they put it somewhere they don't have access to at all. And that's a thing that happens over and over again. So, there's a couple of careful bits of engineering that need to be done right in order to make this. This sounds like a simple scenario, right? You thought you asked a simple question. I mean, I'm here like I'm sweating bullets and so it's really actually not easy, although it can be once you get the right pieces in place if you do it carefully. So the place you store I'm going to go with raw is not the right word. The place you store the canonical data, it's really important that it be really cheap. And so, because as it starts getting expensive, you will start asking questions like, is this worth it? And you're going to ask those questions about your data architecture because at the end of the day, we all have budgets, we all have businesses to run. But this is not the place you want to ask it, if at all possible. Collecting all your data and having all of it somewhere is such a valuable feature. The feature of not thinking about whether you have the data and it's available, or whether, like someone says, hey, could we collect this new data? You don't want to have to do a cost-benefit analysis at that point.
You want it to be so inexpensive, you just say yes.
You want to not think about this. All right, so like all the people who do this well, and people do this well sometimes, have to do it. It has to be cheap. So there are different answers to how you do that, but okay, so let's pretend you've made it cheap. So the other feature you need is the next layer of your architecture, and I can go through the 5 layers, and the next layer of your architecture where you use the data is going to be more expensive. And so now you're going to have to ask these questions of what's worth it to my business. So if I have, in the dumbest imaginable way, which is the best way in this case, collected everything, I just have everything, all right, great. But I'm not using all of it, and I'm not made of money here, so I can't necessarily put it all into a database, a data store, whether it's our technology, someone else's. So you're gonna make some choices. So it's really important that layer be graceful in terms of human workflow. It needs to not be too expensive a decision to say, oh yeah, let's go ahead and put that in there.
Let's opt into our analytics.
Yeah, so when you say, let's put it in, you're paying $1 price. You don't want to accidentally pay way too many dollars.
Right.
When you opt out, the stuff will be invisible to you. It'll be dark matter. You'll never even be aware that you're not aware of it. And you don't want to make bad business decisions because of that. So both decisions can be potentially expensive. And since you're fundamentally taking data that you're not inspecting very frequently and you're putting it somewhere you can inspect it, you're not going to get this right all the time. There aren't tools for inspecting the data that you don't inspect. So you need it to be fairly easy to change your mind. And so the rebuildability, the scalability, the indexability, the fungibility, I can talk about this in a bunch of different ways. Being able to determine what's in your live data storage and being able to change that over time to fit your business needs is a really important feature. So back to the thing I said earlier, which is cost is a really important feature of the layer upstream of this. Well, some of the ways people optimize the cost are too expensive in terms of workflow, in my opinion. And so what people will do is they will put things in like Glacier in Amazon, which as far as I can tell, Glacier is code for I'll never see this data again, although people will differ with me. But the point is, if you put it in a place that takes 48 hours to recover from tape backup, you'll never use it again.
Right.
Because you already don't know what data's in there. And then just even trying to find out what's in there suddenly takes you this massive human workflow, calendar time, wall clock time. You just won't do it. So, I think I once said to you, what you really want is a good active cold storage layer.
And then I laughed at you.
Yes.
Because it doesn't make any sense.
Well, you do that a lot. But so the point is, you want your cold storage, you want your non-live,
I'm going to break it down though. Cold storage, you're basically saying you're not actively using it, but you're keeping it at the ready.
You can't search it.
Right. You can't search it. So in your context, it's not something that at the end of the line, if you will, you're not searchable, but you want it there ready enough that you want to bring it in quickly.
That's right.
And that's the active part.
That's right. And so even though costs are important, there are still some trade-offs. And so generally speaking, file type storage of different types, and in my head, think of like S3 or your favorite of these, raw.
Still cheap enough.
It's cheap enough, but it's available.
But
right
it's
now.
available now.
I can go get that file right now. I don't have a 48-hour call someone and wait on the phone workflow process to get it.
So you're imagining at the end of the day, and correct me if I'm wrong, almost everything kind of starts out as active cold storage, frankly, because it's cheap.
Yeah.
You're opting in without thinking about the cost benefit because you just want it. And then you're saying, but do we need it all at the end of the line, or do we need a subset for now?
That's right.
Right.
And to be clear, I deal in a world primarily of structured and semi-structured data. So things like tables, things like events, things like JSON objects, and things like text. Including very large blobs of text. Like that stuff all makes sense. There are worlds of bits. Like video streams, audio streams. A really high quality video stream from 25 cameras at a baseball park, could take up a whole lot of bits on disk, and maybe you have some harder questions to ask.
Sure.
But in the world I inhabit, I have never seen a single use case where putting it in cheaper storage that I'm talking about is worth it. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, if you index 1,000th of your data, but it costs 10,000 times as much, then don't worry about the rest of it. Sure. It's not the dominant term in your bill. And that's what I see over and over again. The live active storage people are paying for is where the dollars are, and the rest of this stuff is the ecosystem that makes those things function effectively. So if you don't have this stuff set up, the actual stored stuff that you're searching won't be the right stuff, and you're not going to really get the value out of it. But it's already cheap enough in most cases. Put it in S3, put it somewhere like that. And that's
and because it's there, and you find a business need to query it, you can opt it in.
That's right. You can index it now, and
and rebuild your index, because that's an easy thing.
Totally.
You want to treat it like you could throw it away, so it's perfect. You can bring it in when you need to.
Yeah. So and in particular, if the indexing, if the bringing it into live storage feature is minutes to hours, well, you don't want the layer of getting the data to be
more than that,
off of that, right? Because if it becomes the dominant term, it's going to be the reason people don't do it.
Yeah, and the cost savings that might is not worth it. Because to your point, even if you save a little, it becomes almost unusable at that point. So then it's pointless.
Then why did you store it at all?
Yeah, why bother?
In that case, just put it on tape archives and fire them off into the sun, and it's fine.
Well, on that note, let's wrap it up.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Boom.